All right, folks, we're just about to start. I'd like to welcome you all on behalf of the National Transit Institute. I thank you all for participating in the Reporting for Indian Tribes webinar. The National Transit Institute develops, promotes, and delivers training and education programs for the public transit industry in the United States. We're pleased to have Bailey Krause and Eric Chadwell as our presenters. Bailey Krause joined the NTD team in 2014. She graduated from Michigan State University with a BS in psychology, and she currently serves as the validation manager for the National Transit Database Rural Reporting Module. Eric Chadwell joined the NTD team in 2016. He holds a BBA in finance from James Madison University and currently serves as a validation analyst for the Rural Reporting Module of the National Transit Database. Today's webinar consists of Bailey and Eric presenting their material, followed by a question and answer session at the end. You can participate in the discussion by using the chat pod, which is located in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. I'll be monitoring the chat during this presentation and will save your questions so they'll be addressed at the end. If you've not already printed out a copy of the presentation that was emailed to you, you can click on the handout document in the upper left-hand corner of your screen where it says Handouts to Download, or copy and paste the link in the notes box on the left-hand side of the screen. You can also email Andrea Lambert at andrelam@nti.rutgers.edu, and she will be glad to assist you. So now I will turn over the presentation to Bailey and Eric.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the National Transit Database webinar for travel reporting. My name is Eric Chadwell, and thank you for joining us today. We're going to cover a lot of material related to completing the NTD annual report and using the online reporting system. Here's the contact information for the National Transit Database. If at any point you need general or technical assistance while completing your report, please reach out to the help desk between 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, my name is Eric Chadwell. I'm an NTD validation analyst, and there's my contact information, along with our other presenter, Bailey Krause, and her contact information. We're going to cover several topics during this webinar. We'll touch base on navigating the NTD reporting interface, getting users logged into the system, completing the report your kickoff process, and reporting data to each of the annual report forms. The National Transit Database was established by Congress in 1974 as a means to collect information and statistics on transit agencies. This data is used in FTA's biannual report on the nationwide capital investment needs for public transportation. NTD data is also compiled and published annually for the general public to view and utilize. Entities that benefit from FTA's 5311 program, including states, tribes, and territories, must report to the NTD. This also includes subrecipients of direct grantees. Additionally, previous subrecipients of 5311 who have not reached the end of the required reporting period must report. For example, if an agency purchases capital with 5311 funds, that agency must continue reporting to the NTD throughout the useful life of that capital, regardless of whether they continue to operate transit service. Agencies who do not receive 5311 funds may voluntarily report their data for potential inclusion for future funding. These are our reporting deadlines for NTD reporters. Agencies typically have 4 months following the end of their fiscal years to compile and report their NTD data. If your fiscal year ends between January 1st and June 30th, the NTD report is due on October 31st. If it ends between July 1st and September 30th, the report is due by January 31st. And if it ends between October 1st and December 31st, the report is due by April 30th. NTD follows accrual accounting principles. What that means is that revenues are recorded when earned, regardless of whether or not the receipt of the revenue takes place in the same reporting period. So if a passenger purchases $10 worth of fare, but only uses $5 at that moment, the agency would still report the entire purchase of $10. Conversely, agencies must report expenses as soon as they result in liabilities for benefits received, regardless of whether or not payment of the expense is made in the same reporting period. So if an employee works until December 31st and the agency operates on the calendar year, if the employee receives the paycheck in January, the following fiscal year, the agency must report the hours worked to the previous fiscal year. This same principle also applies to agencies that contract with another provider. If the provider operates until the end of one fiscal year and sends the invoice a month afterwards, the buyer would report the payment to the fiscal year that the provider actually operated service, as that was the period when the buyer incurred the liability for payment. There's been some exciting news coming from FTAs this past year. Congress passed the Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act in December of 2015. It's a 5-year funding bill that's increased funding for the Travel Transportation Program to $35 million. The Transit Asset Module will launch in our current report year 17, and the forms will automatically generate to the 2017 package. Please note that the reporting is optional this year, but will be required next year. If you would like to learn more about this, information can be found on FTA's website. Here you will see an overview chart of the 5311 grants. Next, we will focus on the tribe distribution pictured within the red circle. Here you will see the flow chart of how the funds are granted to the tribes. As you can see, of the $35 million, $30 million is formula-based, and the other $5 million is discretionary-based. Now we're going to go over navigating the NTD Report platform, discuss commonly accessed section of the system, getting new users logged onto the system for the first time, and go over various features of the NTD. This is the new NTD Reporting website launched in early 2016. From this homepage, you can access the NTD Reporting website either by clicking on NTD Reporting tool on the related links on the right-hand side of the page. And you can also click on the reporting login on the left-hand menu, which will then redirect you to a link for the NTD Reporting tool. You'll first land on the privacy disclaimer, read the statement, and agree to it in order to proceed. In this system, your username will be your email address in all lowercase letters. If you have forgotten your password, click on the Reset Your Password link at the bottom of the page to receive an automated email generated from the system. This will allow you to create a new password. If a user has not logged into the system for 60 days, their account will automatically lock. The user will still be able to log into the system, but won't be able to see any of the usual options under the different tabs. The user should receive email warnings prior to the account locking 15, 10, and 5 days prior to that locking. To unlock an account, a user can answer security questions or request to be unlocked. A user can only unlock themselves by answering security questions if they have set up the security questions. You will log in and go to Actions at the top, then Answer Security Questions, and access will be restored once the correct answers are submitted. If you have not set up security questions or simply cannot remember the answers, you should request to be unlocked. To do this, click Actions at the top, then Request Unlock. You will confirm your username, which again is your email, and submit. The request will appear as a task for your user manager of your agency for them to complete. If the user managers are locked out, their request will be sent directly to FTA. To create your security questions, you will navigate to your user profile dropdown at the top right of the screen. Select Profile, then Related Actions, then Manage Security Questions, and then you will complete the form. When you log in, this is going to be the first page that you see. We call this the newsfeed. You'll see status and report updates from the NTD personnel posted here. Tasks are assigned to CEOs, CEO delegates, and NTD contacts. These are usually related to completing the report kickoffs at the beginning of the year or if certain pages are left unsaved or incomplete. Agency reporting forms and profile information are accessed through records. This is the most commonly used tab in the NTD system as it directs users to annual report packages as well as agency profiles. As mentioned previously, reporter profiles are accessed through the Records tab, and this section contains agency data that typically does not change from year to year, such as basic information, which contains agency addresses and DUNS numbers, the reporter modes, where agencies report the types of modes and service they operate, and the reporter users. The e-file library stores communication logs, documentation, and other correspondences between agencies and NTD. You can filter through these items based on the particular report year you're looking for, the type of correspondence, for example, if you're specifically looking for a waiver request or communications and so on, or you can filter on the status of the correspondence. That is to say items that are accepted, rejected, or under review. The form library stores historical NTD reports from previous years. This includes data from reports that were filed in the legacy system prior to 2014. Again, this information that can be found under your agency's profile section. The Related Actions tab allows you to view basic information, reporter modes, reporter users, and allows you to print your previous report year reports along with managing your transit asset sponsor. We will next be covering the process of getting NTD users set up in the system, as well as establishing agency user managers. This is for agencies who are new to the NTD system, for existing agencies who experience turnover and need to establish new user managers to their profile. Every agency must send FTA an official letter designating an employee as the agency's user manager. The user manager creates accounts for the CEO and the NTD contact. The user manager can create accounts for others to enter and edit information or just view the forms. The user manager can also fill an NTD role. For example, the CEO can also be the agency's user manager. Agencies submit an official letter to FTA designating one or two user managers using this template. The template is not yet posted to the NTD website, but if you require one, you may reach out to your analyst or to the NTD help desk. User managers will receive an email notification once NTD processes the request and creates the account. Click the link in the email to navigate to the online reporting interface. We do not include passwords in this initial email. Users will need to navigate to the login page and hit the reset password link in order to log in for the first time. Once the user manager account is established, he or she has privileges to create other user accounts for the agency. The user manager also assigns NTD system roles to each new user. All users in the NTD system must be assigned a specific role. These roles determine a user's permissions. Agencies may have one CEO delegate, one NTD contact, and multiple editors and viewers. All agencies must have at least one CEO and one NTD contact. Here you will see all the permissions that each NTD user role entails. The CEO and CEO delegates can create, review, and edit all forms and issues. They can create a report of request, such as a waiver, extension, or the CEO can create a request for the CEO delegate, and they both can submit an annual report package. The NTD contact can view and edit all forms and issues, as well as submit the annual report package after the first submission. Editors can only view and edit all forms and issues, and viewers may only view the current data in any issues. For the user managers to start adding new users, open the Records tab and click on NTD Reporter Profiles. Next, you will want to open your agency's profile. Then you will click Related Actions on the top row. You will then click View and Manage Reporter Users for the P30 form. Click Add User at the bottom of the page. Please note that the user manager's account is defaulted to the viewer role when first created, but has permission to edit user roles. He or she may change this role to CEO, CO delegate, NTD contact, editor, or remain as the viewer. Once selected, you will need to enter all required information for this new user. Then you will hit Next. The new user must be assigned to an NTD role from the drop-down. Then you will select Next. Once all the information has been inserted, you will hit the Submit button to create. Newly created users will receive a link in their email, just like the user manager, and they will follow the same steps to reset their password in order to log in for the first time. The user manager can create as many accounts as necessary. Now we will cover the first step related to the NTD annual report, which starts with the completion of the report year kickoff. The annual report package is not automatically available to agencies. Completing the report year kickoff generates all relevant report package forms. Completing the kickoff process will allow you to update user roles from year to year, add or edit modes, confirm reporter type for the current report year, as well as for the following report year, fiscal year 18. The CEO or NTD contact must complete the kickoff. This person would log into the system and click on the Task tab. Please note that the kickoff task is available immediately after the agency's fiscal year is over. First, accept the task, then click Proceed to start the report year kickoff. The first step is to update agency users. Ensure that all contact information is accurate and up to date, and that appropriate users are designated to the correct roles. Again, please note that only user managers can add new users or deactivate existing users. The next step is to add or edit modes. If your agency has reported to the NTD in the past, all modes will automatically populate based on the prior year's information. For new agencies, all public transit modes must be entered manually. Select the mode and type of service, as well as these three dates. Examples of transit modes are bus, demand response, rail, ferry boat, and several others. Type of service refers to whether the service is directly operated by the agency or purchased from another provider. The commitment date is when capital funds were first expended for that particular mode. For example, the first vehicle purchase. The start date is the first day of revenue service or the first day transporting passengers, and the end date is when the service was terminated. This is not the last day of the fiscal year. If the service is still in operation, please leave this field blank. Next, you will search for your transit asset management sponsor, if this field applies to your agency. You will be able to search for your sponsor, having them come up in the reporter list below. Once you have searched for your sponsor, select them and hit Continue at the bottom. The system will ask for you to confirm, and you will select Yes, Save and Submit to complete the portion of the kickoff. Next, you will confirm the reporter type for this report year as of 2017. Reminder that all tribes are small system reporters, so make sure that No is selected since you will not be changing your reporter type. Then you will confirm the reporter type for the next report year. 2018. Again, ensure that No is selected, then hit Submit. After completing this kickoff process, reporting forms may take up to 3 minutes to generate. Click OK to end the task. So now I'll be turning over the remainder of the presentation to Bailey Krause to discuss how to complete all required forms related to the NTD report.
All right, thank you, Eric. So now we'll be discussing how to complete the required forms, as Eric mentioned, and we're going to be covering each of these forms that are included in the annual report package. Okay, the reporting forms that may be familiar to you are the B10, A10, A30, RR20, FFA10, and D10. With the inclusion of the Asset Inventory module, the A15, Facilities Inventory, A35, Service Vehicle Inventory, and A90, Transit Asset Management Performance Measure Targets have been added. To open up a report package, first you will click on the Records tab at the top of the page. Click on the NTD Report Packages. This will pull up a list of your packages for RY 17 and 18. As a note, the RY 18 package is just a placeholder. You're going to click on that 17 package, and then after clicking on the package, you'll be taken to the report package summary page. To edit the individual forms within your report package, you will select Annual Forms in the top right-hand corner. You may then select and open individual forms by clicking on the blue link of the form. As a note, you cannot right-click and open up the form in a new tab. You'll just be able to click onto it and you'll go into that new page. The basic information form contains an agency organization type as well as some other basic data elements. You'll be able to edit the data from the summary page now by using the drop-down Select Organization Type. Your organization type should be populated from the prior year, but if it is not, please select Tribe. If you are not a tribe and on this phone call, you will select whatever organization type is. Directly below the organization type is the demographic information area. If you serve multiple states or go into an urbanized area, you will click on Add UZA and add the applicable areas. Please disregard the service area square miles in population as they are not required, and there will be a form update at some point to remove this from this form for tribes. All right, next up, you should, however, report the appropriate tribal area for your agency. Tribal area selections are based on the U.S. Census Bureau data. Report the areas you operate according to NTD server rules, which can be found in our policy manual posted on the NTD homepage. To add your tribal area, if it is not pre-populated, you will start to type in the name, and that it will start to populate, and you'll be able to enter it onto the form and save it. If you have any questions on what your tribal area is or if it is missing from the list, please contact your analyst. Do not update filing a separate NTD report unless you contract a separate service that will capture the service data in another report. We will discuss this scenario momentarily, but when you are finished with the B10, you will select Save and Validate. The B30 form captures information for contracts with other agencies. This is, of course, that will only apply to tribes in certain scenarios. If you directly operate all of your own service and do not operate on behalf of another agency, you will not need to add this form. The NTD requires agencies that buy transit service to report the service as purchased transportation as long as it meets these 3 criteria. The buyer's service must pay the full cost of operations for the service. The service must operate in the name of the buyer, which includes vehicle branding, and the seller must operate and manage the service. If you believe the scenario applies to your agency, please reach out to your analyst for confirmation. You will indicate whether the other party is an NTD reporter or a private company. In most cases, the agency will be an NTD reporter. Search for the agency, select them, and click on Continue. Now you'll start to report the details of this contract. We'll say in this example that the reporter is the buyer. The reporter will refer to the entity completing the report in this instance, so the tribe is purchasing the service. The three types of contracts for the NTD reporting purposes are competitively bid, negotiated contracts, and subsidies. Competitive contracts include sealed bids, requests for proposals, and two-step procurement. Typically, agencies that contract with other public agencies enter into a negotiated agreement, and agencies that contract with a private company enter into a competitively bid contract. The primary feature describes how the buyer funds the service, whether they pay the seller a negotiated fixed rate per unit of service, whether that's miles, hours, ridership, or some other factor, or the buyer reimburses the seller's net operating expenses based on an approved budget. You'll indicate who reports the service for the particular contract. This relates back to that filing separately section of the B10. If the selection here is that the service is captured in another report, the filing separately section on the B10 form would indicate which purchase transportation mode will be capturing this data. You'll indicate whether the buyer provides any public assets to the seller for operating service, whether it's vehicles, maintenance facilities, or other assets. And then you'll select the appropriate modes related to the service. These modes will automatically be populated from the P20 of the profile in this instance. Right, you'll complete all the required fields here. Be sure to report the number of vehicles operating at annual maximum service under the contract, that is the peak service. Also report the number of months the seller operated service during the report year. Additionally, report all purchase transportation fare revenues regardless of which entity retains the fares. You must also report the total contract expenses net of those fare revenue and also net of any capital leasing expenses if that applies to your agreement. Once again, there's a lot of information that we're running through with this B30, but you will absolutely be able to reach out to your analyst if you do have any questions. We can walk you step by step. We are here for you. Trust me on that. All right, so we're going to loop back into tribal subsidies. So tribal subsidies are a unique type of agreement. In these instances, an agency contributes an annual subsidy to a local transit provider but does not cover the full operational cost. Once again, full operational cost is purchase transportation. If it's not fully full cost, then it's subsidy in this instance. So it also does not operate or purchase other modes. Thus, subsidies do not meet the threshold of full cost by the NTD definition. So let's say a tribe pays a local transit provider a fixed amount per year to operate a bus route extension. The provider adds several stops along one route to service the reservation. The buses are branded as and managed by the provider. Since the tribe is not covering the full cost of the service, they will report the financial contribution as a subsidy and not a contract. In another example, a tribe contracts with a private company to operate demand response services. The tribe covers the full cost of operations, brands the vehicles as tribal transit, and manages all scheduling and dispatching operations. The tribe in this instance would report this as a full cost contract. And once again, if you do have any questions on how to report a contract with another provider, please just reach out to us and we'd be more than happy to assist. All right, next we're going to go into the A10 form, the first of the asset forms. The Stations and Maintenance Facility form, or A10 form, captures the type and number of maintenance facilities utilized for the provision of public transportation. These assets are reported based on the capacity and ownership type. You'll also report the number of passenger stations that are owned across modes. All right. Agencies must complete one A10 form per mode and type of service. You can see that the facilities are categorized by ownership type along the top row. If one facility is shared by two or more modes, you may report a prorated share based on the number of vehicles it services. All right. For example, if a subrecipient or agency operates a dollar ride or demand response service as well as a fixed route bus service, let's say they own one facility that services both modes, they own 10 vehicles in total. The demand response mode uses 6 vehicles and the bus mode uses 4 vehicles. You would then report 0.6 of the facility for demand response and 0.4, sorry, I have that right. 0.6 for demand response and 0.4 for bus. Please note, if you do use the prorated method, the sum of all these facilities should always equal 1 between all modes that it operates. All right, next is a Revenue Vehicle Inventory Form, or A30. This form is where you report all your revenue vehicle data. You'll categorize vehicles and fleets, identify basic vehicle information, and report the funding type and ownership type for all vehicles. If you completed this form previously, data will be pre-populated from 2016 reported data. You'll only need to report new vehicles and new fleets or edit existing fleets. If you are new to NTD reporting, you will enter all vehicle information manually. You may either click Add Fleet at the bottom to report a new fleet, or select an existing fleet and click on Edit Fleet. If you have multiple vehicles that are identical across all of these data points, you will report them all together under one fleet ID. If the vehicles are different in any way, they must be reported as a separate fleet. You'll select the vehicle type from a drop-down menu, report the total number of vehicles in the fleet, report the number of active vehicles. As a reminder, spares are included in the active vehicle count. You will then report the ownership type, funding type, manufacturer year, vehicle length, which is end-to-end or bumper-to-bumper, and the seating capacity, which includes the driver's seat. You will also indicate who owns the vehicle titles, which indicates whether the vehicles are owned or leased, which will loop back into the ownership type. And we'll also be circling back to this form to talk about the new features shortly. After adding a vehicle, the fleet is automatically assigned an ID number. This number is generated once you save the A30 form. Please remember to retire fleets that are no longer in service rather than deleting them. Fleets should only be deleted if they were added to the mode incorrectly. A common question we receive is, what is the difference between active and inactive vehicles? Transit agencies must report the number of active vehicles in the fleet as of the end of their fiscal year, and active vehicles do provide regular service and include spares. To retire a fleet, you will update active vehicles to 0. Once that occurs, the question, is this fleet retired, appears, and you will select yes. The Reduced Reporting, or RR20 form, contains the highest volume of data in the NTD report, so this is the big one. The different sections of the RR20 include directly generated funds, non-federal funds, federal funds, service data, and safety data. Under the Financial Data section at the top, report the total annual expenses for the year based on the mode and type of service. This is the grand total of all funds expended for public transit. You may earn more than you spend, but on this form, you will only enter what was spent/accrued, so what Eric was talking about earlier. Below the total funds expended by mode and type of service, you'll begin to break down this total expense by their original source of funds. Once again, as I mentioned previously, report the amount that was actually used for reimbursement and spent, and not the total grant or award. Fare revenues, found directly below, are any funds received directly from passengers in order to utilize the service. This can come in a variety of forms like cash, prepaid tickets, reduced or subsidized fares, and donations that are made on board the transit vehicle at the fare box. So there's also a line for donations. However, if that money was made on the transit vehicle, that is classified as a fare revenue. Some examples of other directly generated funds, like advertising revenues, concession revenues, fundraisers, park and ride revenues, or investments on returns, will be found below. And if you enter an amount in the other directly generated fund column, a comment box will appear, and that's where you're going to type that information in. And then below that, in the last type of directly generated fund, are revenues accrued through a PT agreement, which will be reported if you receive revenues from another agency that pays for a full cost contract that you provide. All right. As mentioned above, you will report expenses by mode and type of service. To separate these funds, you will want to determine which expenses are direct and can be easily traced to a mode. These may include specific driver wages or vehicle repairs. Then you will want to determine which expenses are joint, which are costs that are incurred for the benefit of one or more than one mode and cannot be easily traced. An example of this may be a transit manager's salary or dispatch staff. You may allocate those joint expenses or shared costs to each mode by an allocation factor, such as vehicle revenue miles or vehicle revenue hours. Below the directly generated funding section lies the non-federal funding section. You'll enter the data accordingly based on what funds came from donations, contract revenues, local funds, state funds, and other non-federal sources. Again, please be sure to report these funds based on operating and capital expenses. Next, you'll be able to select all applicable funding sources from the list of federal programs. The various FTA programs are broken down in detail. If you expend funds from other federal grant programs, you would either select other federal funds, other USDOT funds, or other FTA funds. Any of those other funding sections will require a comment just like other directly generated funds to describe the funding. All right. So the RR20 form, if you were around in the end of report year 2016, the total funds expended by funding type was updated to the top of the page, which is that non-editable running total of funding that you're entering. This should match the total funds expended by mode and type of service in most instances before you submit the form. So it's a very easy check to make sure your funding is matching what you're spending and what you're reporting. Oh, sorry about that. Okay. Miles and hours. So down to the service section. Miles and hours should only include revenue service, which is when the vehicles are transporting passengers or are able to transport passengers, including layover and recovery time. Revenue service does not include deadhead, driver training, school bus or charter services, and vehicle maintenance. Also, when reporting unlinked passenger trips, please include all riders, which are usually classified as regular and or sponsored. Passengers are counted each time they board the vehicle, no matter how many vehicles they use from their origin to their destination. Sponsored trips, which are part of the unlinked passenger trip number being reported, are trips that are paid for in part or in full by a third party. And there are detailed tables found within the NTD policy manual, which will further clarify what is revenue service for each mode, and it will have a breakdown and different examples. All right. Vehicles operating an annual maximum service, or VOMS, are the number of revenue vehicles an agency operates to meet the annual maximum service requirement. VOMS are counted during the peak season of the year on the busiest day, but you'll want to exclude any atypical days. Excellent. So we talked about subsidies earlier on the B30. So if you do have a subsidy and you're not reporting any modes, this is going to be the layout that you see for your RR20. It is a condensed version of the previous form we just saw, with only the non-federal and federal funding sections available for data entry, and you're only going to report the contribution as well as any administrative and overhead costs associated with managing the subsidy. Pretty quick. All right. The final form of the package that you'll see is the FFA-10 form. The federal funding allocation form allows agencies to allocate their vehicle revenue miles between multiple rural areas or non-UZAs and urbanized areas / UZAs as applicable. Agencies that receive 5311 funds from 2 or more states report how much of a service is operated in each state. So instead of just having one UZA line, as you can see here, the 0-NE, so they're only saying that they report information to the state of Nebraska, they'd have multiple, either 0-NE/OK, or they may have a UZA in there, which would be a 3-digit number. All right, so this is the layout of the form. Everyone will see this. The form will pull in the service data reported on the RR20. You'll see under the item column on the far left, we have the total vehicle revenue hours, total unlinked passenger trips, non-fixed guideway vehicle revenue miles, which is just your vehicle revenue miles, and non-fixed guideway operating expenses, which is just operating expenses, just the terminology that's used. The first thing you will do is to select your UZA reporting method at the top from the drop-down. If you operate within one state, you'll usually select actual vehicle revenue miles. If you operate within more than one state, you can either select actual vehicle revenue miles, or if you can select actual data, and we'll discuss these methods shortly. All right, if you select actual vehicle revenue miles, you'll only be able to enter data into the VRM box in the system. We'll populate the rest of the data. If you only operate in one non-UZA, the total VRM in this form should be the same exact value as the VRM reported on the RR20 to the left, as you can see. If you operate in more than one non-UZA and we'll be splitting up the total between them, the total should always equal 100% of the miles being reported regardless. Also, please note that the FFA 10 form does not update with changes to the RR 20. If you complete the service data section of the RR 20, complete the FFA 10 form, but then if you do make any RR 20 adjustments after that, you'll have to resave the FFA 10 with the new data. If you do operate in more than one non-UZA and track all service separately, for each non-UZA, you will select the actual data UZA reporting method and report all actual service data between non-UZAs. It will have different percentages. Instead of just having one percentage all the way down, 62% all the way down, it'll have 62%, 32%, etc. All right, the last form, D10 form. This is a very quick form. The CEO certification is pretty straightforward. The CEO will attest that all data captured in the NTD report is accurate, truthful, and up to date. You'll also confirm your methods of collecting ridership data. So this is a little bit of an update from the prior year and how the D10 looked. So once in the form, the CEO will read these statements and select yes to both, hopefully, confirming that all data are accurate and conform to the NTD/USOA requirements. After saving and validating that first part of the form, the CEO will click on the blue working link, unlink passenger trips at the top, and select how your agency collects ridership data. In almost all cases with tribes, this method will be 100% count of unlinked passenger trips. Basically, the bus driver is saying, yes, 4 people got on the bus, 2 people got on the bus, 1 person, so it's more of an accurate 100% count. All right. Next, we're going to lightly cover the NTD Asset Inventory Reporting Module. NTD is currently phasing in the transit asset management requirements, with report year 2017 being optional for reporters. As you can see here, next year's items will start to be required. The annual reporting requirements starting in RY18 include setting annual performance targets, updating the inventory and condition data for your managed participants if you have any, and updating your narrative report if you are a group plan sponsor and or a sponsor in general or have your own report. So a lot of the time tribes will be under the state, so it just depends on your individual type. All right. So the common performance measures that you will be reporting in rural include the percentage of vehicles that have met or exceeded their useful life benchmark, as well as the conditions of your facilities. Right. Common to states will be group plan sponsor and group plan reporting, where they are the sponsor to a tribe. Tribes can be participants under the state plan regardless of their funding relationships, or they can be their own plan. All right, the TAM NTD Crosswalk found here as well as on the TAM website shows the key TAM plan and NTD reporting. On the TAM website, you'll also be able to review and access other asset management reference materials. All right, for more information on the asset inventory, you can check out the recorded webinar that was held on 9/20 and 9/21. These will show you more in-depth look at the forms and requirements that are upcoming. All right, next we're going to take a brief look at the new forms and fields that are optional in RY17, which you're probably going to see at some point. All right, the first new form is the A15 form, which is the Facilities Information Form. The A15 form will collect basic information on administrative and maintenance facilities that are used to supply public transit service. You will fill out the name of the facility, the primary mode it services, any secondary modes that it may service, if it's a private mode, the type of facility you are reporting, the year it was built or reconstructed as new, the square footage. If it holds parking, it will allow you to enter how many parking spaces it has, the capital responsibility the agency has towards the facility, and if there are any notes that you would like to add, you may enter them. All right, in the next section of the A15, you will fill out the condition assessment, which will be an integer value of 1 to 5, as well as the estimated date of the condition assessment, which could be when it was built or when it was reassessed. All right, going in order of the form, the A30 form received a couple new fields that are optional. The agency fleet ID was added this year to assist reporters in understanding what vehicles belong to what fleets. Another addition is that the no capital responsibility checkbox, which is optional in RY 2017. You will select this if you have no capital replacement responsibility towards the fleet. Checking off this box will remove the requirement for reporting a useful life benchmark, and below that is an area where you can enter any notes for the fleet that you may have. So continuing on the A30, below the note section will be the useful life benchmark section that I spoke of earlier, which is be required in RY18 for all fleets for which you have a capital responsibility. FTA has outlined a default useful life benchmark for each vehicle type, but transit agencies may adjust as applicable. Once the useful life benchmark is filled out, the useful life remaining years will be updated automatically. All right, the A35 service vehicle inventory will also be introduced as optional in RY 2017. The A35 will collect data on different types of service vehicles used to indirectly deliver transit service and maintain revenue vehicles. The type of vehicle, number of vehicles, service life, manufacturer year, capital responsibility, and estimated cost will be reported much like the A15. All right, the last new form that you may have already seen last year is the A90. The A90 is where an agency or sponsor reports the portion of their assets that have met or exceeded the useful life benchmark set. They will compare the current year targets to the live data pulled in from the asset forms. And once again, only the group plan sponsor will complete this form. So you may be able to see it and edit, or see it and view it, but you may not be able to edit it. All right, the first section of the A90, just to familiarize yourself with it, will include the rolling stock, and as you can see here, there are grayed out sections under the 2018 target percentages. This means that there are no vehicles being reported that fall under those types, and the NA is selected. The next section contains the equipment targets. This report is based on the 3 vehicle types on the A35 that we went over previously. And the third section contains the facility targets, and the sponsor will be reporting the percentage of the facilities that rate below a 3 on the condition scale. And the last item on the A90 is the narrative report, which will be uploaded. And the narrative report will outline the performance targets and your agencies / all the participants' progress towards these targets, and that may include any changes within the transit system. All right, as I mentioned earlier, the Asset Inventory Module webinar went into much more detail about all these requirements and forms, so please feel free to review that webinar and reach out to us with any questions. Excellent. All right, so after you've completed all the forms, the submission process will start. You would do this by clicking on Related Actions from your 2017 report package. Please note that only the CEO or CEO delegate can submit the original submission or first draft of the NTD report, while the NTD contact to submit all subsequent revisions. When in Related Actions, select Submit Annual Report Package. So we'll go there. Yep, Related Actions. Submit Annual Report Package. All right. So once you submit the report and there are no issues, nothing's going on, the validation process will start. So your assigned NTD analyst will review the entire report for accuracy and consistency. They'll compare the data submitted this year to data submitted last year for any significant changes, as well as ensure that all the data was reported to the correct fields. We're definitely available prior to your report submission if you do have any questions as you are going through the report, or have questions on the actual validation questions being asked, as a lot of it will be in system, even more so than last year. You'll be able to take advantage of any resources that we have, pre-submission calls, checklists, the webinar today. Like I said earlier, we're definitely here to help. Your analyst should be reaching out to you soon if they haven't already with any of these welcome materials as well. All right, so as we approach the 2017 year, once again, you should already have heard from your analyst at least once, if not more. They're going to be sending you all the updated information for this year. We're definitely here to guide you through the submission and validation process, so please do not hesitate to get in touch with us if you have any questions or concerns. Once again, here is the contact information for our team, as well as the NTD Help Desk line. It is open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern. Wanted to thank you again so much for listening, everyone. We're going to be opening up for questions.
Okay. So far, we have one question that came in during your talk, and the question is from Emma Featherman. She wants to know, why are you removing area for tribes? And that came in at about slide 70.
Okay, so it's actually the area is going to stay, so tribal areas will stay. If you're talking about the service area population and service area square miles, that is just something that tribes do not report, as there is no requirement for that.
Okay. So once again, if you have any questions, just type them into the chat. Will this webinar be offered again, is the question from Anne.
We do not have anything scheduled at this time. However, this webinar will be posted on the NTD website very soon.
Right. If you go to the NTI website, there's links to all of our previous webinars, and this one will be up ASAP, I can guarantee you.
Thank you.
Okay, here comes another question, also from Emma. Bailey, when using the census data for tribes, oftentimes the census areas do not include the whole area of the tribe reservation.
So for NTD, what we look at is the tribal area census. So when you're entering data into the B10 form for service area, that doesn't go into any data product or anything for anything for FTA wise. So what FTA is really looking at is the tribal area and the population within it. And you're gonna, if you do have any questions about that, you're going to want to contact the FTA Tribal Transit Program, like the liaison, with any concerns that you may have about that. And Emma, if you do want to reach out to me directly, I can kind of point you to where you can find that online, or that person online.
All right, here comes another question from Emma. But the population is wrong because our reservation is comprised of 3 state counties, and FTA only uses the data from one of the counties.
Okay, yep, that's something you're definitely going to want to contact FTA Tribal Transit Program about that, because NTD is only handles the actual reporting requirements in the reporting of the data. We don't handle the actual census and any of those kind of concerns. So I do apologize about that, but I'm more than happy to point you to that person after this call.
Okay, I think there's some other questions are coming through. Here we go. Another question from Emma Featherman. But if the NTD data is used in the formula allocation, shouldn't all data be used so FTA is getting the correct information?
So the only data that we're giving them for this specific data point is your reservation name. Other than that, everything comes from the Census Bureau. So that would be a completely different, it'd be something FTA would have to decide on how to completely change their apportionment. So the information we're giving them for, once again, this specific apportionment is going to be the name of your reservation. So I can have you speak to someone else, unfortunately, but as far as NTD is concerned, that's where we are.
All right. Emma says she'll call you offline, so.
Thanks, Emma.
I think we have a couple other questions coming through. Or not. All right. This one's from Alyssa Ben. If the sponsor state does a maintenance facility assessment, does the tribe also have to submit an assessment?
So if the state is submitting the plan and the tribe is in the plan, then they would not have to. The tribe would not have to, that is. You can also review this in the TAM program as well, just to, if you did have any other questions like that.
Okay, I think that's about it for our questions. I'd just like to thank everyone for participating in this webinar, and definitely a special thank you to Bailey and Eric for their informative presentation. And just a reminder, you will be receiving an invitation to fill out an evaluation for this event. NTI greatly appreciates your feedback, so thank you. And thank you guys again for this webinar.